The security camera footage was crystal clear. Margaret Whitmore, HOA president and self-appointed neighborhood watchdog, sliding open the glass door to someone else's backyard pool at 2:47 a.m. What she didn't know was that her illegal midnight swims were being recorded every single time and that her victim had been planning the perfect trap for weeks. Tonight, with 50 of the neighborhood's most influential residents gathered for an elegant dinner party, Margaret would finally get caught red-handed in a way that would destroy her reputation forever. The only question was, would she realize? The cameras were rolling when she stripped down to her underwear and dove in. The morning sun cast long shadows across the pristine backyard of 1247 Maple Ridge Drive, where Dr. Sarah Chen stood frozen at her kitchen window, coffee mug trembling in her hands. For the third time this month, wet footprints led from her pool deck to the gate, and her carefully maintained pool water had that telltale cloudiness that came from unauthorized night swimming. "She did it again," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible over the gentle hum of the pool filter. The rage that had been building for weeks threatened to boil over, but she forced herself to breathe deeply. As a trauma surgeon, she'd learned to compartmentalize her emotions, but this violation of her personal space felt different, more invasive than any emergency room crisis she'd ever handled. The pool had been her sanctuary since the divorce. After 18-hour shifts at the hospital, she'd come home to float under the stars, letting the warm water wash away the weight of life-and-death decisions. Now, knowing that Margaret Whitmore had been using her pool like a personal playground made her feel sick to her stomach. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from her neighbor. Tom Rodriguez saw the HOA, which leaving your backyard around 3 a.m. Got it on my Ring doorbell if you need it. Within minutes, Tom was at her back door, his expression grim as he handed her his phone. The timestamp read 2:47 a.m., and there was Margaret, 53 years old, HOA president for the past 6 years, and the neighborhood's most feared busybody, opened Sarah's pool gate with practiced ease. "Look at this," Tom said, his voice thick with disgust. "She's got a damn key." Sarah's blood ran cold as she watched Margaret unlock the pool gate with what looked like a duplicate of her own key. The woman moved with the confidence of someone who'd done this many times before, setting down a small towel and what appeared to be a bottle of wine on the pool deck. "How the hell did she get a copy of my key?" Sarah asked, though she already suspected the answer. Last month, Margaret had insisted on a safety inspection of all pool areas, claiming it was required by the HOA charter. Sarah had reluctantly handed over her keys, watching as Margaret spent an unusual amount of time examining the pool gate lock. "She's been planning this," Tom said, shaking his head. "My wife noticed our water level was off a few times too, but we thought it was evaporation. Now I'm wondering ... Sarah scrolled through the video, watching Margaret strip down to her underwear and slide into the pool with disturbing familiarity. The woman swam laps as if she owned the place, occasionally sipping from her wine bottle and looking up at the stars with an expression of blissful entitlement. "She's treating it like her personal spa," Sarah said, her voice hard with anger. "Do you know how many hours I worked to afford this place? How many night shifts I've pulled to pay for this pool?" Tom nodded, grimly. Everyone knows Margaret's been struggling since her husband left. Lost half her assets in the divorce, had to downsize to that tiny condo. But that doesn't give her the right to steal from you. Sarah's mind raced as she watched Margaret emerge from the pool, dry off with casual ease, and slip back through the gate. The woman's movements were practiced. Routine. This wasn't a one-time transgression. This was a pattern of calculated theft. "I'm calling the police," Sarah said, reaching for her phone. "Wait," Tom said, placing a gentle hand on her arm. "You know how this works around here. Margaret's got the police chief eating out of her hand after all those HOA community safety meetings. She spun this as a misunderstanding, claimed she was checking for safety violations or some bullshit." Sarah's jaw clenched. Tom was right. Margaret Whitmore had cultivated relationships with every authority figure in their suburban enclave of Riverside Heights. She'd positioned herself as the guardian of property values and neighborhood safety, making herself indispensable to city council members, police officials, and even the fire department. "So what do you suggest?" Sarah asked, though she could already see the calculating look in Tom's eyes. "Next weekend is the annual HOA board meeting and fundraiser dinner," Tom said slowly. "Margaret's hosting it at her place, right?" All the board members will be there, plus half the neighborhood. What if she got caught in the act, in front of everyone? Sarah felt a spark of something dangerous ignite in her chest. Go on. You've got that new security system, right? The one with the motion sensors and automatic recording? What if we made sure Margaret had an opportunity to take her usual midnight swim on the night of her big party? Sarah's pulse quickened. It was risky, potentially illegal, and definitely vindictive. It was also the most satisfying idea she'd heard in months. She'd be ruined, Sarah said quietly. In front of everyone who matters in this neighborhood. She's been ruining other people's lives for years, Tom replied. Remember when she got the Johnsons fined for their garden gnomes? Or when she forced Mrs. Chen to remove that beautiful cherry tree because it was disrupting the aesthetic unity? Margaret's made a career out of humiliating people. Maybe it's time she got a taste of her own medicine. Sarah stared at the video. Again, watching Margaret's entitled smile as she floated in stolen water. The woman had violated her privacy, stolen her peace, and turned her sanctuary into a crime scene. Traditional justice had failed it. It was time for something more creative. What exactly do you have in mind? Sarah asked. Tom's grin was predatory. Margaret's party starts at 7 p.m. next Saturday. The board meeting runs until 9. Then there's dinner and socializing. By 11, everyone will be sufficiently wind-drunk and gossip-ready. All we need to do is make sure Margaret gets the urge to take her usual swim right around then. And how exactly do we do that? Leave the pool lights on, set the temperature to that perfect 78 degrees she loves. Maybe even leave a bottle of that expensive wine she's been stealing from you on the pool deck. Make it too tempting to resist. Sarah felt a smile tugging at her lips despite herself. You're suggesting we bait her. I'm suggesting we give her exactly what she wants, Tom corrected, and make sure she gets exactly what she deserves. Over the next hour, they refined their plan. Sarah would host her own small gathering, just a few close friends. To coincide with the crucial moment, Tom would position himself with a clear view of both properties, ready to alert Margaret's party guests at precisely the right moment. The security cameras would capture everything, providing irrefutable evidence of Margaret's crimes. There's one more thing, Tom said as they finished planning. I've been talking to other neighbors. The Hendersons think Margaret's been using their hot tub. The Patel family's been missing pool chemicals. She's not just stealing from you, Sarah. She's been systematically violating the entire neighborhood. Sarah's anger crystallized into something cold and sharp. This wasn't just about her pool anymore. This was about a pattern of abuse, a tyrant who'd been operating with impunity for far too long. Then we make sure everyone knows, Sarah said quietly. We make sure she can never do this to anyone again. As Tom left, Sarah stood alone in her kitchen, staring out at the pool that had once been her refuge. Margaret Whitmore had stolen more than just pool time. She'd stolen Sarah's sense of security, her peace of mind, her ability to trust in the basic decency of her neighbors. But that was about to change. Sarah picked up her phone and scrolled through her contacts. She had 6 days to prepare, 6 days to ensure that Margaret's fall from grace would be as public and devastating as possible. The woman had spent years building her reputation as the neighborhood's moral authority. In less than a week, that reputation would be destroyed by the very arrogance that had created it. The trap was set. Now all Sarah had to do was wait for Margaret to walk into it. As she watched the pool sparkle in the afternoon sun, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Anticipation. Margaret Whitmore was about to learn that some people, when pushed too far, push back twice as hard. The countdown to justice had begun. The invitation arrived on cream-colored cardstock with gold embossing. Margaret Whitmore's signature touch for anything bearing her name. You are cordially invited to the annual HOA board meeting and fundraiser dinner, it read in elegant script. Join us for an evening of community celebration at the residence of Margaret Whitmore, HOA president. Cocktails at 7 p.m., followed by our quarterly board meeting and dinner. Dress code, garden party, elegant. Sarah held the invitation between her fingers, marveling at the audacity. Margaret was throwing a party to celebrate her leadership of the very community she'd been systematically robbing. The irony was so thick it was almost suffocating. She's really going all out, Tom said, reading over Sarah's shoulder. They were standing in her kitchen, surrounded by the equipment they'd been accumulating for their plan. Catered dinner, live jazz quartet, Even hired valet parking. Must be costing her a fortune. Money she probably stole from the HOA emergency. Fun, Sarah muttered, remembering the heated board meeting where Margaret had insisted on discretionary spending authority for community improvements that never seemed to materialize. Over the past 5 days, their surveillance had revealed the full scope of Margaret's nighttime activities. She'd been using the Hendersons' hot tub on Tuesday nights, stealing pool chemicals from the Patel family's storage shed on Thursdays, and treating Sarah's pool like her personal resort every weekend. The woman had turned neighborhood theft into a carefully scheduled routine. The motion sensors are all calibrated, Tom reported, checking his tablet. The moment she steps onto your pool deck, every camera will activate. We'll have her from 6 different angles, plus the infrared footage will be crystal clear even in the dark. Sarah nodded, her stomach tight with anticipation. They'd spent the week upgrading her security system, installing additional cameras with night vision capabilities, and motion-activated floodlights. The pool area was now under more surveillance than a bank vault. "What about the timing?" Sarah asked. "Perfect storm," Tom grinned. "Margaret's party starts at 7. Board meeting runs until 9:30, confirmed with Janet Morrison. She's bringing 3 agenda items that'll drag on forever. Dinner service starts at 10, cocktails and socializing until midnight. By 11:15, everyone will be sufficiently lubricated and looking for entertainment." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Sarah would host her own intimate gathering, just 6 close friends from the hospital, all discreet professionals, who could be trusted to keep their mouths shut until the moment was right. They'd be positioned on her back deck with a clear view of the pool, sharing wine and conversation while waiting for the main event. "You sure about the bait?" Tom asked, gesturing toward the expensive bottle of Chateau Margaux 2015 sitting on the counter. "She's been stealing my wine for weeks," Sarah said grimly. "I found the empty bottles in her recycling bin when I walked past her condo yesterday. This one's worth $400. She won't be able to resist." The bottle would be placed on the pool deck at exactly 11 p.m., along with a soft towel and the pool lights set to their most inviting setting. The temperature would be maintained at a perfect 78 degrees, and Sarah would make sure her curtains were open just enough to suggest she was asleep. "And you're sure she'd take the bait?" Tom asked. Sarah pulled up the security footage from the previous weekend. "Watch this," she said, fast-forwarding to the moment Margaret spotted the wine Sarah had deliberately left on the pool deck. The woman's face lit up like Christmas morning, and she practically sprinted to claim her prize. "She's a creature of habit," Sarah continued. "Every weekend, same time, same routine. She checks that my house is dark, uses her stolen key, and treats herself to whatever she finds. The only difference this time is that she'll have an audience." Tom's phone buzzed with a text from his wife, Maria. "She's in position," he said. "Maria's at the party right now, keeping tabs on Margaret's location and alcohol consumption. She texts me when it's showtime." Sarah felt her heart rate spike. After days of planning, the moment was finally approaching. She'd changed into dark jeans and a black sweater, better for moving around undetected. Her friends from the hospital would arrive at 10:30, giving them time to get settled before the action began. "There's something I need to tell you," Sarah said, her voice suddenly serious. "I talked to Detective Morrison yesterday, Janet's husband. Off the record, of course. He said they've been getting reports about Margaret for months. Could prosecute, but enough to establish a pattern." Tom's eyebrows rose. "What kind of reports? Theft? Harassment? Abuse of power?" Apparently, she's been using her HOA position to intimidate people into compliance. The Rodriguezes weren't the only ones who got fined for bullshit. Violations. She's been systematically targeting anyone who challenges her authority. "Jesus," Tom breathed. "So tonight isn't just about your pool. Tonight's about justice," Sarah said firmly. "For everyone she's hurt, everyone she's stolen from, everyone she's made miserable with her petty tyranny." The doorbell rang, and Sarah's pulse jumped. Through the peephole, she could see her colleague, Dr. Amanda Foster, carrying a bottle of wine and wearing the kind of elegant dress that suggested she was ready for drama. "The cavalry's arriving," Amanda said as Sarah opened the door. "I brought the good stuff. Figured we might need it." She paused, taking in Sarah's expression. "You sure about this? Once we do this, there's no going back." Sarah thought about the weeks of violation, the sleepless nights knowing someone was using her pool, the feeling of being unsafe in her own home. I've never been more sure of anything." Over the next hour, Sarah's friends arrived one by one. Dr. Michael Chang, the chief of surgery, Dr. Rebecca Torres, the trauma team's lead psychologist, Dr. James Patterson, the hospital's legal counsel, Dr. Lisa Park, the head of emergency medicine. Each of them had worked with Sarah long enough to know that she wasn't prone to dramatics if she said someone needed to be stopped. They trusted her judgment. "Okay, people," Sarah said as they gathered on her back deck at exactly 11 p.m. "Here's the situation. Margaret Whitmore has been systematically stealing from neighbors for months. She's violated my property, my privacy, and my peace of mind. Tonight, she's going to pay for it." She explained the plan in quick, efficient terms, watching as her friends' expressions shifted from surprise to understanding to barely contained excitement. These were people who dealt with life-and-death situations every day. They knew the importance of justice and the satisfaction of seeing wrongdoers face consequences. "Motion sensors are active," Tom reported from his position at the fence line. "Pool lights are on, temperature's perfect, and the wine is positioned exactly where she see it." Maria's text came through at 11:12 p.m. "Margaret's getting restless. She's had 3 glasses of wine and keeps checking her phone." She had just told Mrs. Henderson she needed to check on something and stepped outside. Sarah felt adrenaline surge through her system. Dr. Chang positioned himself with the night vision binoculars, while Dr. Torres set up the backup camera equipment. Dr. Patterson had his phone ready to record, and Dr. Park was monitoring the security feed on Sarah's tablet. They were like a surgical team preparing for a complex operation. "Movement," Tom whispered from the fence. "She's coming around the back of your house." Sarah's hands trembled as she dimmed the deck lights, creating the perfect ambience for surveillance without detection. Through the darkness, she could see Margaret's silhouette moving across her yard with the confidence of long practice. "She's at the gate," Dr. Chang reported quietly. "Jesus, she really does have a key." They watched in fascination as Margaret unlocked the pool gate, her movements fluid and practiced. She paused at the sight of the expensive wine, her face breaking into a smile that was visible even in the dim light. "She's taking the bait," Dr. Torres whispered. Margaret picked up the wine bottle, examining the label with obvious delight. She popped the cork with a corkscrew she'd apparently brought for the purpose, poured herself a generous glass, and took a sip that spoke of someone who knew good wine when she tasted it. "Now comes the show," Sarah said grimly. As if on cue, Margaret began to undress. She folded her expensive party dress carefully, placing it on the pool deck chair along with her jewelry and shoes. Standing in just her underwear, she raised her wine glass in a mock toast to the night sky. "To the spoils of victory," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the water. Sarah felt sick. This wasn't just theft, was a celebration of violation, a ritual of entitled contempt for everyone Margaret had been stealing from. Margaret slipped into the pool with practiced ease, wineglass in hand, and began to swim lazy laps. She was completely relaxed, completely confident, completely unaware that her every move was being recorded by 6 different cameras. "She's really going for it," Dr. Patterson said, his voice tight with disgust. "Look at her, she's acting like she owns the place." For 10 minutes, they watched Margaret enjoy her stolen luxury. She floated on her back, sipping wine and gazing at the stars. She swam to the deep end and back, her movements graceful and unhurried. She even used Sarah's pool noodles, playing with them like a child in a public pool. "Time to call in the cavalry," Sarah said quietly. Tom was already texted. The silence that followed Margaret's desperate question stretched like a taut wire, broken only by the gentle lapping of pool water against the tiles. 50 faces stared at the woman who had terrorized their neighborhood for years, now cowering, half-naked in stolen water, clutching an empty wineglass like a shield. "Get out of my pool," Sarah said, her voice carrying the cold authority of someone who'd just reclaimed her power. Now Margaret's face cycled through a dozen emotions: rage, humiliation, calculation. Sarah could practically see the woman's mind racing, searching for an angle, an excuse, a way to spin this disaster into something survivable. This is a misunderstanding," Margaret finally stammered, her voice shaking. "I was conducting a safety inspection. The HOA charter clearly states the HOA charter doesn't give you the right to break into people's homes. Police Chief Davidson interrupted, his voice cutting through the night air like a blade. "Ma'am, you need to exit the pool immediately." Margaret's eyes darted around the crowd, looking for allies, for anyone who might help her salvage this situation. What she found instead was a wall of disgust and betrayal. These were people who had trusted her, voted for her, followed her leadership for 6 years. Now they were seeing her true nature exposed in the most humiliating way possible. I have a key," Margaret said weakly, as if that somehow justified everything. "A key you stole during a fake inspection," Tom called out from the crowd. "We have video of you making the copy." Margaret's face went white. Sarah stepped forward, holding up her phone with the security footage queued up. "Would you like to see it, Margaret? Or should we skip straight to the part where you broke into the Hendersons' property to use their hot tub?" A collective gasp rose from the crowd. Mrs. Henderson, a 70-year-old widow who lived alone, pushed forward with fury blazing in her eyes. "You've been using my hot tub," she demanded. "I thought I was losing my mind. The chemical levels, the temperature changes, I spent $300 on repairs because I thought something was wrong with the system. And the Patel's pool chemicals," Sarah continued relentlessly. "Should we talk about those two?" Raj Patel stepped forward, his face dark with anger. "My wife thought she was going crazy, miscounting the chlorine tablets. We've been rationing our pool maintenance for months because we thought we were using too much." Margaret tried to climb out of the pool, but her hands were shaking so badly she couldn't grip the ladder. Dr. Chang, despite his disgust, moved forward to help her, his medical training overriding his personal feelings. "Don't touch me, Margaret," hissed, finally managing to pull herself out of the water. She stood there dripping, her expensive underwear clinging to her body, her carefully maintained facade completely destroyed. "Cover yourself," board member Morrison said, throwing a towel at Margaret's feet. "You're embarrassing the entire neighborhood." Margaret wrapped the towel around herself, but there was no covering the shame, no hiding from the magnitude of her exposure. She'd been caught red-handed, in the most literal sense possible, and everyone she'd ever tried to impress was watching her fall. "This is illegal surveillance," Margaret said, grasping at straws. "You can't record someone without their consent." "On my own property?" Sarah laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. "Try again, Margaret. Every camera is positioned on my land, recording my pool, which you've been stealing access to for months." Chief Davidson stepped forward, his expression professional but cold. "Mrs. Whitmore, I'm going to need you to get dressed. We need to have a conversation about multiple reports of trespassing and theft." "You can't arrest me," Margaret protested. "I'm the HOA president. I have community standing," had Janet Morrison corrected. Past tense. "As of right now, you're suspended pending a full board review." Margaret's face crumpled. The power she'd wielded for 6 years, the authority she'd used to intimidate and control, was evaporating in real time. "You can't do this to me," she whispered. "I've given everything to this community." "You've stolen everything from this community," Sarah corrected. "My pool, the Hendersons' hot tub, the Patel's chemicals. What else, Margaret? What else have you been taking?" The crowd murmured, neighbors exchanging glances and whispered conversations. Sarah could see the realization dawning on face after face how many unexplained problems, how many missing items, how many strange occurrences could be traced back to Margaret's nighttime activities. "The community center supplies," someone called out from the back. "Remember how we kept running out of toilet paper and cleaning supplies?" "The holiday decorations that went missing last year," another voice added. "My garden hose," old Mr. Peterson said loudly. "I thought teenagers were stealing it. But it was you, wasn't it?" Margaret's face was a mask of panic as the accusations mounted. What had started as a simple case of pool theft was expanding into a pattern of systematic community pillaging. "I want to see the books," Councilman Roberts said, his voice cutting through the chatter. "All of them. Every HOA expenditure, every community fund transaction, every emergency repair that somehow never got completed." Margaret's eyes widened. "You can't just—" "We can, and we will," Roberts continued. "I'm calling for a full financial audit of the HOA under your leadership. Every dollar accounted for, every expense justified." Sarah felt a surge of satisfaction. This was bigger than she'd imagined, more complete than she'd dared hope. Margaret wasn't just going to be humiliated, she was going to be thoroughly investigated, her entire reign of terror dissected and exposed. "I need to get dressed, Margaret," said her voice barely above a whisper. "You need to get a lawyer," Chief Davidson said grimly. "Mrs. Chen, I'll need copies of all your security footage. Mrs. Whitmore, don't leave town while we're conducting our investigation." Margaret gathered her clothes with shaking hands, her movements clumsy and desperate. The elegant dress that had made her look so authoritative at her party now seemed like a costume, a facade that had finally been stripped away. "This isn't over," Margaret said, turning to face Sarah with a flash of her old venom. "You think you've won, but you have no idea what you've unleashed. I know things about every one of you secrets that could destroy your precious little lives." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Even in defeat, Margaret was reaching for her weapons of intimidation and blackmail. "What kind of secrets?" Dr. Torres asked, stepping forward with the calm confidence of someone who'd spent years dealing with manipulative patients. "Please, enlighten us." Margaret's mouth opened and closed like a fish. She'd been bluffing, and everyone knew it. Her power had never come from actual knowledge, it had come from people's fear of her authority. The reluctance to challenge someone who seemed so connected and untouchable. "That's what I thought," Torres continued. "All bark, no bite, just like every other bully who gets exposed for what they really are." Sarah watched Margaret's final gambit collapse. The woman who had terrorized their neighborhood for years was revealed as nothing more than a petty thief with delusions of grandeur. All her committees, all her rules, all her self-righteous enforcement had all been a cover for systematic criminality. "I'll be in touch about pressing charges," Sarah said, as Margaret finally finished dressing. "Breaking and entering, theft, harassment will let the lawyers sort out the full list." Margaret straightened her shoulders, trying to salvage some dignity from the wreckage of her reputation. "You're all going to regret this," she said, her voice shaking with fury. "When property values plummet and this neighborhood turns into a slum, remember that you brought this on yourselves." "Property values will go up," Tom said cheerfully. "Now that we don't have a criminal running the HOA." The crowd laughed, and Margaret's face went scarlet. She pushed through the gathered neighbors, her head held high despite the circumstances, clinging to the last shreds of her pride. "Ma'am," Chief Davidson called after her, "I meant what I said about not leaving town." Margaret paused at the gate, her hand on the latch. For a moment, Sarah thought she might try one more manipulation, one final attempt to control the narrative. Instead, Margaret just walked away, her wet hair clinging to her shoulders, her expensive shoes squelching. With each step, the woman who had once commanded respect through fear was now just another disgraced public official slinking away in shame. "Well," Janet Morrison said, breaking the silence that followed Margaret's departure, "I guess we need to call an emergency board meeting and elect a new president," Roberts added. "Someone who actually lives in the community they're supposed to serve." Sarah felt the weight of dozens of eyes turning toward her. She'd been the one to expose Margaret, the one who'd orchestrated this moment of justice. The implication was, clear the neighborhood needed new leadership, and they were looking to her. "I appreciate the confidence," Sarah said carefully, "but I'm not interested in politics. I just wanted my pool back." The crowd laughed again, but this time it was warm, appreciative. They'd seen Sarah's integrity in action, her refusal to abuse power even when it was offered to her. "That's exactly why you'd be perfect for the job," Dr. Patterson said. "Someone who doesn't want power is usually the best person to wield it." Sarah looked around at the faces of her neighbors, people she'd barely known before tonight, but who now felt like allies.